compliance. So when we're talking about compliance, what is compliance, you would say, in the actual context when we're talking about the Department of Inland Revenue?
Very good question, Mr. Todd. When we talk about compliance in the context of the Department of Inland Revenue, I keep it simple. I normally would say, think about the Royal Bahamas Police Force. That's fundamentally what the compliance unit does or is in the Department of Inland Revenue. We are responsible for ensuring that all businesses within the Commonwealth of the Bahamas is indeed compliant with all of the laws, regulations that are necessary to operate a business within the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
And the thing is, we have such a large responsibility when it comes to this, because I know the numbers growing every day. I think one of the last numbers I had, we had about 60,000 plus businesses throughout the Commonwealth.
Yes.
So when you think about that and trying to make sure all of these businesses and new businesses are growing and compliant, you have a large and a major job to do.
Yeah.
So just talking a little bit more about that role and the responsibility, what are some of the roles and responsibilities of the compliance officer?
Yes. The role of the compliance officer or the unit itself, like I said earlier, we are responsible for ensuring that all businesses within the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, so it's not just Nassau-centric, you're talking about all of the islands. And currently we have a staff complement of about 15, so imagine that. And we are talking about having to visit the islands, fundamentally the major islands within the Bahamas, Abaco, Exuma, Long Island, Eleuthera. And in so doing, we have to visit each business to ensure that they are in compliance with the law. And when I say in compliance with the law, to ensure that their business license is valid, those persons who are VAT registrant, to ensure that their VAT certificate is on display, to ensure that they're receipting, as simple as that may seem. There are a lot of business owners, they don't pay attention to their receipts. And by law, it's important for their receipt to be set up properly. And so we ensure that those things are in place. And so we also will have client advisory. We will advise taxpayers on issues or concerns that they have that they're not fully aware of, or what the law speaks to a particular situation. We will seek to advise them in those matters as well.
And you mentioned something very important pertaining to the receipts, because last year we did a series on VAT education where we were talking to persons about understanding the difference between a VAT receipt and an actual VAT invoice. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that is something that's very important. A lot of businesses that are registered for VAT that need to know the difference between that. So with that, I would ask, and this is a major question, how do you then, intend to achieve these objectives of monitoring and enforcement with the unit that you actually have?
Yes, monitoring and enforcement is the watchword for us. And by that, I mean we randomly monitor taxpayers' account. We randomly visit businesses, whether it's in Nassau or on a particular island, and we just show up. And by monitoring the accounts, what we do is to determine whether or not they are not underreporting, whether or not they are filing and paying on time. And if we find that they are not, then we will seek to advise them that this is something that you need to do, because if not, you can find yourself being hit with a fine,
heavy
penalty,
heavy fines,
and of course we do it to ensure or to at least send a message to them that more or less you've been watched. We are watching you, and in light of that, we hope by sending that message, it will reduce the risk of them defrauding the government of its due taxes.
And it comes back to one of the things that falls under our mandate pertaining to our mission statement to try to get as many of our clients to be voluntarily compliant. Because in a lot of ways, those businesses that aren't compliant or try to undercut what they're actually doing make it difficult for those that actually want to be compliant in how they go about doing things at the end of the day. And I'm glad that you say it. A lot of times the persons don't realize how important it is for them to stay compliant because it also speaks to the integrity of their business, not just within the Bahamas, but also for those international markets when persons are looking to grow at the same time. So it comes back then to the next question. Why is compliance then so critical to the success of the tax system that we have here in the Bahamas?
Okay, well, first, the law requires taxpayers to be compliant. And what we find is that a lot of taxpayers, they do not pay much attention to the amendments to the Business License Act. They don't pay much attention to what is required of them to operate a business. And when they fail to do that or fail to adhere to the regulations and laws, then they find themselves, when we visit them and they are in breach, then they find themselves we having to fine them or issue penalties. And of course, to them, they find that very frustrating. And it's like, well, we weren't aware of this. We weren't aware this is what we had to do, or we had to make these adjustments to our POS system, or we had to make these adjustments to our receiptings. But by then, it's too late. The breach and the offense has already occurred. And they just need to pay more attention to what legislation says about operating a business within the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And as it relates to the government, it creates a deficit in revenue that should have been collected by the department.
And I find that to be interesting because a lot of times I hear a lot of persons say, I didn't know. But for as long as I know, on an annual basis, we get regular amendments every year. The department itself takes the updated amendments. We put it on our website for our clients who may not know, inlandrevenue.finance.gov.bs. You will find all of the updated amendments that are actually listed, whether you're looking at VAT, business license, real property tax, first home, all of those are loaded onto our website. And on an annual basis, the governments are doing different amendments. So, it's also on the taxpayers' responsibility to be aware of these things. It's one of the things I've learned the hard way, that ignorance is no excuse to the law.
Indeed. No. How do I say this not to come across as being offensive? But it seems to be like a culture out there where a lot of business owners, they just don't bother to engage the department as such, in spite of us putting out the information out there, and it's out there. But for some reason, to me, it seems to be a culture where persons just do what they want to do, and when they are caught, it's always, okay, well, it's the department's fault. Y'all did not advise us, and we have to keep saying to them, it's on our website, it's on social media, is on all the platforms over there. The information is there. Why aren't you taking advantage of it? So when we told them at this point that you have to be fined or a penalty have to be issued based on this breach, then it's a problem. But we have to do our job. And a famous slogan I have is compliance by all for the benefit of all.
And one of the things I'm hoping from the podcast and the other things that we're putting out there is to encourage persons to stay more up to date with the information that they need so they can be compliant and avoid getting fined. So that brings me to my next question. Then what is the difference between, you would say, voluntary compliance and enforced compliance?
Voluntary compliance, simply put, is once a taxpayer is aware that he or she is above the threshold of $100,000, you register to become a VAT registrant. And involuntary registering is where we would find persons who are registered as a TIN, not a VAT, registering, but in actuality, their turnover, annual turnover is above 100,000.
Far exceeding.
And yeah, far exceeds the threshold that we would say to that taxpayer that you have to register for VAT, and in those instances, they will force register them for VAT. And while we're on this issue, we do find as well a number of persons out there who are non-VAT registered, who are also charging and collecting VAT.
And, you know, we mentioned this before on one of the previous shows when we were talking with the VAT unit. And it's just a reminder to our persons, two things to keep in mind. Firstly, we publish on the Inland Revenue's website the listing of VAT registrants. So for persons that are VAT registrants doing business, you can always check that site to make sure the businesses that you are dealing with are VAT registered, so that you don't put yourself in a place where, one, you're not compliant, but also when you have to do your filing, you're not able to get the full benefit of it because who you're dealing with may not be registered. But we also encourage persons at the end of the day, if they need to, when they find themselves dealing with a business that is charging VAT, but they don't have a official VAT registrant, to also reach out to us and let us know. And that comes to my next question. So what?
And I'm glad, sorry to butt in, but I'm glad you made that point. Because earlier, when we mentioned that what some of the things that the compliance officers do is that we advise taxpayer of, you have to have your business license and your VAT certificate displayed in a conspicuous manner within your store. So for me as a customer or anyone who entering that business establishment, we should know that you are a VAT registered. We should know that you are a legitimate registered business. Have your business license and your VAT certificate on display. That in itself is an offense. If it's not on display, that's an offense. And we find a lot of that out there where taxpayers, they will have, as we would drop their business license, they keep it on their cell phones or on their laptops, and it's not on display and within their business. And that's an offense to not have it conspicuously displayed.
You know, we'll talk a little bit more about that. We're going to take our first break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about possibly even some of the fines and things persons have to consider when it comes to being compliant. So we're going to be right back here on DIR Let's Talk Sense. See you back in a few minutes.
Today, we're going to show you how to register on the Real Property Tax Portal. Step 1. Go to propertytax.gov.bs. Step 2. Click New User Registration. Step 3. Complete property information. For name assessment, enter your name as it appears on the tax certificate. Please note that you cannot use dashes or any punctuation on the form. Now enter your property assessment number, which is the 7-digit number found on the top right-hand corner of your tax bill or certificate. Finally, enter your grid reference number as displayed on your tax certificate. Step 4. Complete owner information. Enter your full name. Now select owner type. If you select corporation, insert your company name here. If you select individual, skip the next field. Click here to select the country where you reside. Now select your government ID type. If you are corporation or company, select TIN. If you are an individual, select NIB. And if you are non-Bahamian, select non-applicable. Now enter your email address once more for confirmation. Next, enter your cell phone number. Create a password of your choice, and once more for confirmation. Your password must be at least 8 characters and must include uppercase, lowercase, and numbers. Finally, review your information to ensure it is correct. Then click Register in order to submit. Once submitted, you will receive a confirmation message stating that your registration request has been accepted, and an activation link has been sent to your email that must be activated within 1 hour. Please note, if your activation link expires, you must contact the department at rptverification@bahamas.gov.bs for assistance. For more information on real property tax registration, contact the department at propertytaxinquiries@bahamas.gov.bs.
And welcome back to DIR Let's Talk Sense. I'm your host, Beaumont Todd, the Training Communications Manager here at the department. Today, we're talking about compliance and what it means from the department's perspective, but also what it means for you, the taxpayer, and the responsibilities you have as a business owner and also as a consumer. So right before we went to the break, we were talking with Mr. Walton Winters, talking a little bit about some of the fines that you can incur. Now, businesses have to realize at the end of the day, you can incur up to about $150,000 for the fines or more, as well as jail time for not being compliant and following the rules. And as a consumer, we encourage persons to also stay knowledgeable about what it is that you also are responsible for. If you go into a business and you don't see a VAT certificate, that means they shouldn't be charging you VAT. And you also have the responsibility to report these type of things to us so we can make sure that you are being treated fairly when it comes to being a consumer going into these different businesses. So, Mr. Winters, that would bring me to my next question. What role then does the taxpayer education play in improving compliance?
Yes, like we would have said earlier, the information is out there. It's on our website. It's fundamentally on all of the social media platforms. We also seek to encourage taxpayers that they need to visit our website, visit these platforms, and of course we do a lot of town halls as well. So the information is out there, and it's critical for the taxpayers to be abreast and to be aware of the information, because it assists them in the operation of their business and avoiding fines and running afoul of the law is very, 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 very important.
And, I want to encourage persons at the same time to realize, we do put on a number of different virtuals on a regular basis, as well as we've had some town halls, both in Nassau, the Family Island. And so to pay attention to the schedule for these things, because then it makes it easier for you for the information that you need. And we're also happy to answer any questions, whether you put it on our socials at DIR Bahamas, on our YouTube, our Instagram. We'll be happy to answer those questions. You can email it to taxinquiries@bahamas.gov.bs, and we will be happy to assist in any way we can. Now, coming back to our businesses, I would ask, are there any common mistakes that businesses make that are not intentional but still affect their compliance?
Yes, as we would have shared earlier, as simple as not having your business license, your VAT certificate on display. And two, not having those on display, that carries a fine. I think it's time to be corrected, about $50,000 there.
Yeah.
About as simple as that may seem. We find the taxpayers, again, do not pay particularly attention to their receipting, which is important because if you're a VAT registrant, your receipt, first and foremost, must show the VAT rate. Whether it's 5%, whether it's 10%, it must have the VAT rate on it. Your location, your TIN, the address, the subtotal, the total. Your receipting must have these information. Is important to the customer, and is important to us, and it's important for you being compliant, because that's what the law requires of a business.
Are there any, I would say, noticeable challenges for taxpayers being compliant or committing offenses?
Oh, yes. I'm glad you asked that question. Taxpayers, that's a challenge for us. We find a lot out there. Taxpayers, some are permitting minors, for instance, under the age of 18 years, to be employed in direct sales of restricted goods, meaning alcohol. And we find this a lot on the family of islands where taxpayers will allow their granddaughter or their grandson or a child that is under the age of 18 to actually be operating or running a liquor store. Wow. That's a serious offense. Again, I mentioned earlier, you find a lot of non-VAT registrant charging and collecting VAT. That's an offense and it carries a heavy fine. And in those cases, the VAT has to be recovered.
Imprisonment, if I remember correctly, if you're found doing it as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And in those cases, the VAT has to be recovered. So which means, therefore, as compliance officers, we will have to do a business assessment on that business. I say the person was operating as a non-VAT registrant for 2-3 years, charging and collecting VAT. You have to account for the VAT that you would have collected for those 2-3 years. So which means, therefore, we'll have to do a business assessment of you. We'll have to pull your POS record. We will have to question you in terms of your staff complement, salaries, what is your weekly turnover, monthly, yearly, so we can, and of course, whether you're paying rent or you own the buildings. So we ask these questions because we want to determine at the end of the day what your actual revenue or turnover will be for a particular year. So cumulatively, for the 2-3 years, we will have a fair idea of what those revenues or turnover was, and we tax you 10%.
They put themselves to be in a position for forced audit.
Yes.
It's basically what it is.
Yes, and you audit. And another thing another offense I think we need to touch on, whether taxpayers are fully aware of it or not, but they should be. Home-based businesses operating from a storefront. And when a home-based business license specifically say to you, home-based, you cannot erect a storefront or signage within your yard or on your property is serviced by phone. But then we find, again, a lot of this happens where persons with home-based business license, they're actually selling at a location from a storefront. And they will actually say to you, oh, I wasn't aware of it. And you have to simply point out to them, but your license is saying home-based. How did you get from this particular address to this location
And that
offering a particular...
That raises a couple of other questions.
Yeah.
A couple of other questions.
Yeah. So
can you walk us through what happens when a business is found to be non-compliant? What are some of the steps, I guess, we would take in terms of that?
Well, in particular, like what I described with a non-VAT registrant, I'm charging and collecting VAT. That is a process that we would normally go through or take the taxpayer through to advise them and to show them where they went afoul of the law. And the VAT has to be recovered. So we have to take these steps to determine what their revenue was, because the government, after all, has to get its VAT. Again, we would find that there are persons out there who are willfully evading being assessed and paying their due taxes. That's a process where we can, the controller has the ability to have a search and seizure warrant and done through the courts. As compliance officers, we can enter that establishment. We can seize goods, assets, whether it's computers, whether it's boats, planes, cars, vehicles. And once those assets are seized, the secretary would determine the value to in commiseration to what the outstanding VAT is, and if there are other assets that's outside the value of the taxes owed, it is returned.
Okay. So one of the things I really want to know is, have you found any criminal offenses with any of the businesses that you've come into interaction with in dealing with compliance?
That's an amazing question indeed, Mr. Todd. What I'm about to say to you may be shocking. Since heading the compliance unit over the years, we have seen an increase in criminal activities among some taxpayers in the areas of committing fraud.
Wow.
Yes, we have seen a substantial amount of cases relating to fraudulent business license, fraudulent tax compliance certificate, VAT certificate, etc., to the point where taxpayers would actually adjust the issue dates on their business license or adjust the issue and end date on their tax compliance certificate, because as you're aware, if a taxpayer has a contract with any government agency, one of the requirements is for them to provide that agency with a valid tax compliance certificate and a valid business license. So if the taxpayer find themselves not having a valid business license or an expired TCC, and for some reason they are unable to obtain a valid business license and a TCC within the time frame to meet the requirements for that contract, we have found where taxpayers would have went to the extent where they actually forged the issue date on a particular business license and the dates issued and end dates for a tax compliance certificate to facilitate that particular contract.
Wow.
And yes, and that's been proliferated for in recent months.
So any advice for our listening audience, closing remarks right before we go?
Yes, I would just say be compliant. I have a simple phrase I always use: compliance by all for the benefit of all. And we have a job to do in the compliance unit, and we will do our job. We will be out there. We will be checking your businesses to ensure that you are in compliance with the laws and regulations of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas as it relates to you operating a business within the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. So let's do this. Let's be compliant.
Mr. Winters, thank you so much for being a guest with us today. I am sure our listening audience has gained a lot from our conversation, and I definitely look forward to us having another chance at another opportunity. So,
Thank you, sir.
this has been DIR Let's Talk Sense, your host, Piermont Todd. I look forward to seeing you here once again, and as we want you to be, stay compliant inside this 2026. We look forward to seeing you on our next show and our next time right here at DIR Let's Talk Sense. See you next time.
At Centerville, I'm LaDawn Davis.